Judges, this is team number 425. 425. So, if you'll tell me when you're ready, I will start the timer. Ready? Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. We are Team 425, presenting here our slides, Fiscal Policy Standpoint of U.S. Economy. It's a quantitative analysis of fiscal policy and evaluations of U.S. economy. So we are presenting here how the fiscal policy works and how the U.S. economy works, and it's a quantitative analysis with evaluation.
This is an average American baby. He is about a year old. I'm not really sure if he cares about the U.S. fiscal policy or national debt, but the question is, should we care? With the current situation, by the time when he was born, he was $78,000 in debt. And when he was told that, this was his reaction. Well, can he ever be debtless or in zero debt? It is an issue that has brought us here to talk about it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this presentation is going to be a roller coaster ride. And let me take you through the journey first. First, we'll talk about understanding fiscal policies, and next, we'll talk about why it matters to an average American citizen. Next up would be evaluation of the U.S. national debt, and then we'll talk about how it is affecting the current situation of economic standing of U.S. Finally, after going through all of the hurdles, talking about consequences and problems, we'll reach our destination with a solution.
And we'll talk about moving to the first point, what is fiscal policy? So fiscal policy is the use of governmental spending and taxation to influence the economy. The main purpose of the fiscal policy is to promote the growth and reduce inflation.
Now that we know about what fiscal policy is, let's talk about the types of fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy, it includes increased government spending on infrastructure and social governance and tax cuts to increase the consumer spending. It was used during the times of economic recession to stimulate growth and reduce unemployment. Talking about contractionary fiscal policy, it includes reducing government spending or raising taxes to decrease the consumer spending. It was used during the times of economic growth to prevent overheating and reduce inflation. Furthermore, U.S. fiscal policy is really significant for the U.S. economic system. It helps to create high employment and maintain sustainable economic growth, which helps to reduce or achieve stable or low inflation.
So you are telling me that the government can fix the economy with a simple fiscal policy?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Let me take you through what more the government can do with a fiscal policy. A fiscal policy helps us in crisis. In recent times, we have noticed that we're not safe from crisis, economic crisis, and COVID relief acts or some other stimulus were funded in the economy in order to stabilize the economy and ensure that the economy runs smoothly and generates revenue even in crisis. That is what a fiscal policy does. Next up, not only during crisis, fiscal policies help us achieve long-term fiscal sustainability. We're not here just for a short term. We are here to grow and make America great always. So the next thing that a fiscal policy does is it helps to reduce national debt to GDP ratio. In the past, we have noticed acts like the Budget Control Act and American Taxpayer Relief Act that were introduced in order to address these situations. One may argue that these were effective, one may argue that these were not, but definitely these are some of the objectives and these are some steps that are taken towards reducing national debt to GDP ratios.
So now that we've now that we've talked about the fiscal policies, let's go to what national debt and budget deficit really is. So the budget deficit, it's a shortfall, but it's in a given fiscal year when the government spending is more than the revenue. While national debt is the cumulative effect of all the past budget deficits and also the interest with that. Again, the budget deficit represents a shortfall in a given year, and the national debt is the deficit over many years. We can say that the budget deficit contributes to the national debt, but the national debt is not the same as the budget deficit.
So, after all the introductions of what is fiscal policy, what's the importance of fiscal policy, and understanding of the national debt and budget deficits, we're going to throw on U.S. economic standpoint. Right now, the situations of U.S. economy, I just say that like the points, the growing level is really spreading. So we can see that the CBO's congressional budget projections, the deficit amounts to 5.3% of gross domestic product. So we can see that the U.S. economy has something. So some of the problem. So we can see over the primary deficits or surplus, total deficits or surplus, and net interest outlays. And if you're talking about U.S. federal debt held by the public from 1900 to 2053, like it's a fact that one of the highest creditors of U.S. federal government is their own public. So the federal debt held by the public is projected to 98% of GDP in 2023 to 118% in 2033. So it's a projection, but it might be happening if there is no any changes in the laws, no any changes in the federal government provision. So if we're more talking about the U.S. federal debt, now we are more concerned on the debt. So because like it's important, if we're more talking about the U.S. federal debt, then the current U.S. debt to GDP ratio is more than 100%, and it's a very severe condition. So we have to acknowledge and we have to see these situations. And the debt held by public, I already mentioned that it's really higher. So it's reaching 180% of GDP by 2023, and it's a projection though, but it might be happening if the situation and if the law and if everything's gonna same. So this is the situations about how U.S. federal debt is processing, how U.S. debt is having right now.
So now let's look over what we're here for, the current U.S. debt situation. So who owns the national debt? Of course, there are public investors, there's Federal Reserve banks, but then almost 22%, 21.8% of the public debt is owned by the federal government, the other arm of the federal government. And now it includes Social Security, Medicare, specialized trust funds, civil service, military retirement programs. But among these, Social Security holds the biggest chunk.
I think at the top of that, we can analyze the U.S. current debt situation with different economic powers. A report by Peter Z. Peterson Foundation shows that U.S. is in the top list in projected change in debt from 2019 to 2024 in percentage points of GDP, while most of the biggest economies like Spain, France are supposed to be changing in a negative margin. U.S. is in the top list with highest points, so it's a top concern for U.S. and the policymaker must be concerned regarding this point.
Now, of course, paying back the U.S. debt is there, but what about the servicing of the debt? We need to talk about the interest payments, and $395.5 billion. That's the projection. That's the estimation of this fiscal year. That's 6.8% of all federal outlays. We're shocked when we saw that the spending is more than like about $100 billion more than the veteran benefits and services, and more than the spending on a combination of education, disaster relief, agriculture, science, foreign aid, and environmental protection combined.
Now that we have learned about current U.S. debt situation, let's see how U.S. federal government is spending. According to CBO, this fiscal year, U.S. federal government is spending 19% on Social Security, 15% on health sectors, and 14% on economic security. Also, 12% on national defense. Overall, we can say that 50% of U.S. federal government is spending 15% on national defense.
This is already stressing me out. Let's stress you guys further. Let's talk about major problems faced by the US. First things first, interest payments.
5 minutes remaining.
Interest payments are very high. Servicing debt will exceed military spending by 2025. Next up, we have tax cuts that have added more than 19 billion to debt and are responsible for 57% of increase in debt to GDP ratio since 2001. America is a grand old country, unfortunately, and the changing demographic is a big burden on fiscal policies. Welfare spending are to rise by 68% over the decade with current fiscal policies in place. And lastly, America has achieved its superpower nation status and has been able to maintain it. But having foreign ownership in national debt and having 24% almost of national debt owned by foreign countries, that's a big dent to the US economy, sustainability goals, and its image. Next, we have two graphs that show you how the interest costs are projected to rise very, very steeply in the next 10 to 20 years. And then we have how tax cuts, the Great Recession, and COVID-19's responsibility projected on the graph. We can see that tax cuts have the highest amount in the debt to GDP ratio if we exclude recession and COVID-19 plans.
Let's analyze the now consequences faced by US. So the consequences will be inflation, as government will try to counter its deficit by printing more money. Then it can cause inflation, which will reduce the purchasing power of the consumer, and it will also cause crowding out, as government will compete with private investments as government competes with private investments, then it will cause crowding out, which will definitely affect the economy. Then also, it affects the welfare benefit. As we know, the baby boom generation is aging, and it means that the welfare spending is rising by 68% over the decade, which affects the economy. Similarly, it also affects the future generation because they have to pay the debt.
If we were to go by the current US debt situation, by the time our baby is 18, he would be $144,000 in debt. And by the time he is 30, maybe ready to go work at the Congressional Budget Office, he would be in $226,000 in debt.
So now talking about all the problems, we are coming here for the solutions. So these are the solutions. This is the possible solution for how we can fix the national debt problems and how we can fix the GDP deficit problems. So the solutions are increase the GDP. The first fact is always that we have to increase the GDP. Another is reducing the government spending. So we are 63% mandatory spending, and 75% of that is like social security and healthcare. And another is like increase the tax revenue. That's another most important thing. And another is restructuring the debt situations. These are the most important things. So how we can achieve a very good budget? So first we have to prioritize identify the programs. What are the importance for us? Second, for the non-essential spending, that is the most important thing. Third, we form the enlightenment programs, story barriers, and like fourth, increase the regional revenue. The only way to increase decrease the national debt is like whether we have to decrease the expenditure or whether we have to increase the revenue. So let's increase the revenue.
1 minute remaining.
And the balance of the budget. So these are the most important and strongest points for the good budget.
It's easy to look at the problems. It's better if we can be aware, and it's best if we can address it. We're here because we care about the final fiscal situation of the country. I asked a question in the beginning. Can the baby ever be debt-free in its lifetime? Well, it might take a miracle for that, but let's think about the future babies. Do we want to see them like this, or happy and free like this? Thank you, and we open the stage for any questions now.
Thank you so much. Judges, which of you would like to go first?
for you to give me some specific policies you do, for example, to increase economic growth. You had some things on there, but like what policies would you recommend?
So talking about like policy, mostly like in the fiscal policy, we just have the two main types, like expansionary fiscal policy and then other is contractionary one. So if we are analyzing these current situations after the COVID-19 that we got a very severe conditions right now. So for the current situations, we are not recommending the tax cuts. We are recommending the government spending. We are somehow we have to increase some taxes. But the situation is like in the dilemma right now. If we increase the tax cut, there might be problematic situations for the other corporate office. So for these situations, we have to go a little bit more on the expansionary fiscal policy rather than the contractionary one.
You definitely don't want to use contractionary fiscal policy if you're trying to grow the economy. But I'm just trying to figure out what would you do to expand the base? You want to do a simple tax reform? Do you want to do a flat tax? Do you want to reduce corporate income taxes so there's more investment in the U.S.? What would you be thinking about?
We want to do a simple tax reform because it might affect a lot if we got the tax right now, or it might affect a lot if we increase the tax right now. Because this condition is like we're just coming from the situation that is very severe, and all the corporate sectors are having the problems and facing the problems right now. So we cannot do the huge cut and do like increase in the taxes.
To add on to that, we addressed the changing demographic situation of America. And in order to address that, we could reform some immigration acts. As we know that immigration is coming in and maybe working without social security or undocumented immigrants not paying taxes has caused a huge dent to U.S. economy. So if you can somehow bring a policy to address all of this and make them work and pay taxes, that would definitely stimulate the economy, work good for the entire world, and also boost the U.S. Revenue.
Just sort of following up on the question of what you would do to increase growth. One of your planks was to cut unnecessary spending. What did you determine was unnecessary spending? What type of spending did you identify that you would cut in terms of?
So basically, if we see our budget spending structure, so then we see that some of the it's important to say, but it's a fact. Like our military spending is a little bit higher, and our international and foreign affairs spending is like a bit higher. So if we see the others budget structure as well, then there are a lot of that unusual spending. So we are doing right now. So we can deduct, and that has very little opportunity cost. So that's the best reason. That's the best thing is like we have to got some like defense budget, and we can aid on other sectors. So this could be the better one. And another things is like we can stimulate our manufacturing sector. The current situation is like in order to grow our revenue, in order to grow our income, we can stimulate our current manufacturing sector because our manufacturing capacity is a lot, but we are not working on that full capacity right now. So that could be the better and possible answer for that.
So let me, so I'm going to follow up and ask about, you mentioned entitlement reform. So let me pick a specific entitlement program. Let me pick Social Security. How would you reform it? Would you cut benefits? Would you raise payroll taxes? What specifically would you consider?
So all of these are intertwined with each other. If we increase the revenue, that will consist of increasing employment, right? So when we increase employment, unemployment benefits go down substantially. So whenever you stimulate the economy, that will ultimately lead to a decrease in spending on Social Security. Next, if we have a better healthcare system in the U.S., that could also reduce spending on Social Security benefits.
And we can also think about the retirement age, maybe increase it to 69. Encourage more people to work because we see that people are wanting to work. So I think that might help as well.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Maybe I can see some of the presentation. Not yet.
If one of your objectives is a balanced budget, how do you think that could be achieved?
So for the balanced budget, we have to. It's the first is like every time we have to like think about the right hand side and the left hand side of everything. So if we're talking about the expenditure, we have to see our spending. So right now our spending is more than our our income. So for that we have to see our capacity is like what we are doing right now and what the capacity of our thing. So for the balanced budget, we can say that we're figuring out like we have plans to make a balanced budget, but we just for this now we are more focused on non-essential things. We are cutting the non-essential things, and then like another is like we are reform this. You talk about we are reform the social security as well. So I've seen that the situation that. The unusual social security, the social security, we can reduce the social security benefits as well. So I've seen that the previous budget projections last time. So they've seen that. So our budget on the discretionary and our budget of the our budget on the discretionary are a little bit higher, so we can reform that.
So 30% of our national spending is going towards discretionary spending, and amongst that, almost 50% goes towards the military and defense sector. That could be cut down to reduce our expenditure. And like you mentioned before, the manufacturing sectors are not operating in their maximum capacities. We can operate. We can definitely achieve those capacities, but we're not being able to do that and not introducing fiscal policies to address the manufacturing sector. That could be addressed. So when we increase revenue and decrease the spending to basic finance, that will definitely balance the budget.
Can you give me some examples of some of the, on the tax side, some of the loopholes you would look to reduce or close? So you've got, tax reform that simplifies the tax code, expands the base, and closes loopholes. What loopholes what would you consider to be a loophole that you want to close? If you have any idea how much revenue that could raise, you're trying to make sure that the baby doesn't have $187,000 in debt. That's their safety.
Well, I don't know how much revenue. I'm not sure. We've not really researched on that, but I'm sure like things like especially businesses and corporations. We and I'm going to go a little general here. We hear people like people talk like big businessmen talk about how they pay $0 in taxes, and why like poor people are always paying taxes but the rich people don't. That's the biggest loophole is of course like if you're owning a business and if you're getting your returns on things like buying like an SUV for example, and then writing it off for your businesses. People do things like that. I think write-off is one of the loopholes. Like you don't really see it. Write-off is good for businesses, for corporations. I think it allows the businessmen to work harder, make more money, contribute to the economy. But then again, at the other hand, like again, we're cutting off a lot on taxes with with the write-offs.
If you were presenting this to Congress, what do you think would be your biggest risk to making this work? In your analysis, give us a lot of numbers, but what's your biggest risk you think to making this work?
So you mean like what's the biggest changes you make?
So what you do, you're trying to think about the numbers for debt, you're trying to reduce it, right? If you have a proposal, what's the biggest risk you have to that proposal not working?
So our proposal might focus on like unusual cutting the expenditure. We are expending a lot of things on like unusual things. So that could be the possible solution we're presenting to the Congress, that please cut unusual things, because we are having the problems and we are getting these problems because of that unusual expenditure head.
To add on to that, as you mentioned about non-essential spending, that could be a huge crisis in the budget, because we have two sides on the Congress, where one thing, spending on foreign affairs, is very important for U.S. economy, and the other things that we don't care. America First.
5 minutes for me.
Bipartisan is a very big issue when we talk about presenting this to the government. Also, taxing the rich that we mentioned, or taxing the corporates. The government or the people in Congress receive highest amount of their party budgets or funding or support from corporates and rich people. So that could be a huge issue when you present this situation in the Congress.
I have a question about how you all work together as a group. How did you decide what aspects would go into the participation and what types of programs that you would consider for deficit reduction?
Well, I can go general, and then maybe Arun can maybe you can explain it later. First, it was not all happy faces, right? We all come from different places. We have different opinions. But then the thing is listening and communicating. We all have different values, but then the thing was, what we're saying and why we're saying it and where we come from. I think that was the biggest thing to go in general.
Talking about that, I don't have to define a lot more because he already mentioned that all these things happens because of the regulations we say, and we know what's happening.
Yeah. So ultimately, when our goal is same, when we walk together to reach it, no matter what way we come from, what path we take, what opinions we have, ultimately, if we have a same goal to reach the same destination of achieving a good fiscal policy and reducing U.S. national debt to GDP ratio, we work fine.
And I think the main thing is we all care about this problem and we all want to solve it, right? So
And we all care about the national debt and budget deficit. So all we care about is American economy. So that's one of the best things that we come together and put our ideas forward.
So of the policies that we've sort of discussed, which one do you think has the greatest chance of passing and becoming law, and which one do you think has the least chance of?
So for these situations, I mean, if you're talking about the policy for this situation, tax reform can be passed.
I think the military one, the government is not going to cut the spending on military one because of national security and all those things. But I think tax reform, there will be a tax reform.
You asked for one, but if I had to say a second one that could be passed is America not prioritizing other nations and their issues over our debt. So if we prioritize our debt and if we prioritize increasing our revenue over spending for foreign affairs, then we could definitely cut some spending there, and obviously I think the Congress will agree to it.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, so when you say strong entry barriers to government programs like Social Security and Medicare, what do you mean by that? What are strong entry barriers?
Talking about ground level stuff, okay. We are very known to the fact, I don't have a data to this, but we are very known to the fact that there are people exploiting unemployment benefits. We have a lot of issues where corporates were exploiting the paycheck protection plan. So these things can have more strong entry barriers, and also we could regulate them and we could have an eye on it.
I can add on this. So I've seen that the people coming with the food stamps, they have their different Mercedes, Benz, and BMW, and they are paying through the food stamps.
1 minute remaining.
This could be the, we have to see these things and analyze this fact that EBT and food stamps and the social security need to be straight, and there should be some how the analysis of how the situation, as that person is actually having the trouble needs, and that person is not. So we have to see that situation. That's it.
Yes, we should go more on grassroots level rather than just creating fiscal policies and distributing it over the country. We should look at states, we should look at countries, we should look at counties, demographics, and we should be very careful of what policy is acting where. One umbrella policy for everyone does not work, so we should be more strict on that.
Great. Well, thank you for your great work, and you may join us in the audience now at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.